Hi, friends. In the worship series we concluded last Sunday, we focused on the Gospel of John. As I looked back over the year, I realized that we've been in John's Gospel half the time. That's a lot. One of the many unique characteristics of John's Gospel is the I am sayings of Jesus. Without getting too technical, there are two types of I am statements. One has a phrase that defines Jesus and the other does not. An example of the first is, I am the bread of life. An example of the second is, but he said to them, I am, do not be afraid. So depending on how you count, like if he says the same phrase twice, is that one instance or two? Depending on how you count, there are 9 I am sayings with a defining phrase and 7 without. In all of the I am statements, Jesus is revealing who he is. Now that's easy to understand in statements with defining phrases. I am the bread of life. I am the living bread. I am the light of the world. I am the gate of the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine. In those cases, there's a specific image that has deep and historical meaning, but is relatively easy to understand. The statements that don't have a defining phrase take a bit more interpretation. The key is to remember that I am is the name that God reveals for himself in the Old Testament. When God appears to Moses in the burning bush and calls him to go to Pharaoh and demand freedom for the Hebrew people, Moses is understandably hesitant. But Moses said to God, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. I am in Hebrew is Yahweh, the name of God. So every time Jesus says, I am, he is revealing himself to be God. The tricky thing in Greek is that I am is a common way to say, it's me, or I'm the one. So for example, in John 6, after Jesus feeds the 5,000, the disciples get into a boat and head across the Sea of Galilee. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea, coming near the boat, and they were terrified. But he said to them, it is I, do not be afraid. In Greek, it is I am. So is Jesus saying, here I am, or I am God? Yes, I think both. Every time Jesus says, I am, whether it's I am the good shepherd, or it is I, or I'm thirsty, he's hinting that he is God in person. If we want to know who God is and what God is like, we need to know Jesus. At the very beginning of John's Gospel, he writes, no one has ever seen God. It is the only Son, himself God, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. Jesus makes God known in his teaching, his example, his death, and his resurrection. Through Jesus, we experience a God of extravagant generosity, brilliant creativity, eternal hope, unshakable peace, and boundless love. A God who desires to be close to his children so much that he's willing to give his life to make it happen. Thanks for listening. I'll see you again next week.